Mabuhay, magandang umaga, buenas noches, buona noche. My name is Michael Roring. I'm the head of the Philippine Trade and Investment Center in Mexico City. PTIC Mexico is the Department of Trade and Industries Trade and Investment Promotion for the whole of Latin America. My office is attached to the Philippine Embassy in Mexico, where I also serve as the commercial counselor. This webinar is a preparatory activity to the online business matching sessions that we will be conducting between Philippine exporters and Latin American buyers. At the end of the session, we will give you the details on how you may participate. We have a distinguished lineup of speakers prepared for you today. You can read more about their backgrounds in the link below in your chat box. To start our webinar, Undersecretary Abdulgani Makatoman, Supervising Undersecretary of the Department of Trade and Industries Special Concerns and Trade Promotions Group, will provide us a message. Unfortunately, he can't join us live today, but we have his pre-recorded message for all of us.
A very good morning to our attendees in the Philippines and buenas noches to our friends in Latin America. Welcome to our webinar on Philippine export opportunities in Latin America, organized by our Export Marketing Bureau and Foreign Trade Service Corps of the Department of Trade and Industry. First of all, allow me to acknowledge the presence of our ambassadors who took time off from their busy schedules to be part of this program. Ambassador Demetrio Tuazon of the Philippine Embassy in Mexico, Ambassador Linglingay Lacanlali of the Philippine Embassy in Buenos Aires, Ambassador Marichu Mauro of the Philippine Embassy in Brasilia, and Ambassador Maria Teresa Daza of the Philippine Embassy in Santiago de Chile. This webinar aims to inform and encourage our exporters to pursue opportunities offered by markets in Latin America. In 2019, the Philippine exports to the region was only 1.14 billion US dollars, or a merely 1.6% share of the total exports. I am certain that a lot more can be done to improve this figure. So let us begin today by listening to the presentation of our distinguished resource speakers. Mr. Eduardo Abilis of Bionutrients International from Mexico, Mr. Martin Mansur of Cámara del Asia from Argentina, Mr. Gerardo Velasco of the Chile ASEAN Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Rowena Bagadion of W. Bagadion Consulting from Colombia, and of course, Mr. Leonardo Palhares of the Brazilian Coconut Institute from Brazil. To our exporters, please take advantage of this webinar to learn more about what goods and services you can offer to the Latin American market. Indeed, this webinar could not have been merely timely, as we need to diversify our markets and double our efforts to increase exports, given the economic slowdown brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. To our special guests and resource speakers, thank you very much for sharing your valuable time and expertise as we continue to pursue better trade relations between the Philippines and major Latin American countries. I wish everyone a fruitful day ahead. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
We wish to thank Undersecretary Makatoman for that message. At this point, we will take a souvenir photo for the launch of the Doing Business in Latin America guide. This is a guide that we developed especially for Philippine exporters to guide them on the intricacies of exporting to the region. The links for downloading the the Doing Business in Latin America guides will be available in your chat box. In the meantime, to commemorate the launch of these guides, we will all take a photo, all the ambassadors together with all the speakers. Ambassador Lacanlale, please open your camera. Okay, I think okay. Let's move that for later. At this point, I'd like to we'll have the message from Ambassador Demetrio Tuason. No, I'm sorry. We'll now hear from the co-organizer of the webinar, Director Senen Perlada of the DTI Export Marketing Bureau. Director Senen Perlada leads the Export Marketing Bureau, the formal focal point for export marketing agency of the Department of Trade and Industry in providing enabling services to the Philippine exporting community through business intelligence and strategic knowledge management to support product market and market diversification. He concurrently heads as Executive Director the Export Development Council, the APEX Public-Private Partnership Organization for Export Policy and Development in the Philippines. Director Perlada, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good morning to everyone. Magandang umaga po. In Spanish, buenas noches. Boa noite to our friends from Brazil. So I was given the task to talk about the overview of trade between the Philippines and Latin America. And for that purpose, because we only have 5 minutes for this, I'd like to share my slides. I hope everyone can see the slides. Okay, so this is the overview of Philippine trade with Latin America. So very briefly, I'd like to talk about this overview of Philippines trade in general with the world, the Philippines-Latin America bilateral trade relations, Philippine products with potential in Latin America, and of course, we will also give a chance to discuss about what we import from Latin America. Philippine merchandise trade performance between 2019 and 2020 was basically flat. As you can see, the figures about 180 billion, 182.5 billion in total trade, and about 70 billion US dollars in exports. What's important to notice here is that total trade of the Philippines is growing by almost 9%. Our imports are growing by almost 12% at 11.94%, and exports has been growing only by 4.7%. Our build program has actually made us net importers, most especially for materials and other requirements for our build program. With Latin America, I'd like to talk about a little bit about why we're doing this, why LATAM. Of course, it spans 2 continents, including both North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and of course, South America. It's a 5.3 trillion economy with approximately 600 million citizens. This area is roughly about the size, or well, slightly smaller than our ASEAN market, consumer market. It's a rapidly growing market, and it has a very fast growing middle class. And obviously, because especially at this time, we'd like to really be able to diversify our export markets. So our trade with Latin America, our total trade, as has been mentioned by our Undersecretary, has a share of only less than 1.5%. Our exports to the area only consists of 1.61% of total Philippine exports, while in terms of imports, the share that we have of total imports from Latin America only amounts to 1.41% of our total imports. So with Latin America, you can see there, I won't be dwelling too much on these slides anymore, but based on the 5-year growth rate, our total trade with Latin America is actually growing up healthy over a 5-year period, with imports growing faster than exports. This is always a trouble for me, being in charge of exports. Imports are growing by almost 16%, while exports are growing by just 9.62%. What are the components of or the countries that make up our export markets in Latin America? Mexico is, of course, leading the pack with almost 60% of the total exports that we have to Latin America. And the top 10 countries that we have as export destinations to Latin America make up almost 100%. So total 10 countries already make up 98.5%. Followed, of course, by Brazil with 16.27%, Argentina 6.86%, Chile at 4.6%, and so on. What are the things that we export to Latin America? Reflecting the merchandise exports of the Philippines, where Philippine exports are either electronics or non-electronics, with electronics for total Philippine exports making up about 60% of our total merchandise exports. You will see basically the same here for Philippine exports to Latin America. So electronics make up about 66%, followed by 9%. So you can see there, 8% for transport. Processed food comes next. Carrageenan is a very big item. Tobacco, chemicals, and medical supplies and devices. You know, the Philippines, we have an investor from Japan, and we are one of the world's leading producers of syringe needles, for example, because of certain investments that have come from Japan. The top exports that we have in the case of Latin America, it's basically all electronics, and you can see in this slide that the only non-electronics is Carrageenan, with a value of $21.3 million out of our total exports to Latin America of $1.14 billion US dollars. So basically, it's electronics. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of non-electronics exports to Latin America. Now, what about food? This is a sector that is a mutual interest to the two countries. So I just want to show here that our #1 food export to Latin America is desiccated coconut. Again, not surprising, because actually the Philippines supplies roughly about 80% of desiccated coconut to the rest of the world. So you can see here that desiccated coconuts is about $18.8 million US dollars, followed by juices, tuna, other fruits, nuts, sardines, pineapples, octopus, yellowfin tunas, flour meal, and powder of Chapter 8, and other food preparations. Now, what do we want to promote to Latin America? We'd like, of course, big part of our portfolio is still electronics. We are hoping that more valued, higher valued electronics products can come in from the Philippines to Latin America. Motor vehicle parts, particularly those for replacement parts. We'd like to be able to penetrate the market for design-driven products, home style, furniture, holiday decor, giftware, having some shared history, and in particular, the beach life. We'd like to be able to take advantage of that. So fashion accessories and jewelry as well. Personal care products is a big thing. We have a lot of raw materials that go into what is now organic, especially the ingredients that go, and especially during this time of the pandemic, where good for me products that promote well-being and that boost immune system are really experiencing very high demand. Fresh and processed food, of course, you'll see there fish, lobsters, and all kinds of processed food. That's a strong suit for the Philippines. Coconut products is very strong. I already mentioned that the Philippines supplies the biggest food export that we have to Latin America is desiccated coconut. But we have other coconut products. You have cocoa sugar, which is good for you because of its low glycemic index. You have coconut oil, particularly virgin coconut oil, and we're actually undertaking studies now to do including clinical studies to see that virgin coconut oil can actually be effective to develop your immune system against the COVID-19. Of course, cocoa water, and I'm sure that our Brazilian friends know about this very well, right, Igor? And young coconut chips, this is a very big snack item. And then I had to include coconut flour because this is gluten-free. For some reason, our friends from the Americas, particularly in North America, they have they have a situation with regards to gluten. So coconut flour is one of the gluten-free raw materials that we can supply. Of course, we have to go to health and wellness products, and these are just some of the health and wellness products that we can export. We can have those that are for diabetes. Some of them is really just for overall well-being. We have pili oil, for example. We have moringa, malunggay, and again, mango flour, for example. The seed of the mango can be produced into flour, and this is again another gluten-free kind of raw material. Wines and spirits, I guess for LATAM, very warm-hearted people. We want to know how to have fun, right? So we have a lot of products that we would like to be able at a certain point to be able to promote in your area. The Philippines is, of course, a very big and very good rum producer, but we do have other kinds of wines and spirits as well. For services, we'd like to promote, I hope at a certain point that we will get back to tourism and tourism-related services, education services, IT-enabled services, including business process outsourcing, voice and non-voice, and of course, creative services. We will hear more about this from our other speaker, Weng. She takes care of talking about our export of services, particularly in her sector. And then, of course, franchising. I'm sure that there are a lot of Filipinos also in the countries in Latin America. So we do have these brands that, of course, we have a lot of opportunities for franchising in your area. Now, for imports, let's talk about imports now. Our total import from Latin America is about 1.5 billion US dollars. And our number one supplier is now Brazil, followed by Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and down the line. What do we import from Latin America? Mostly minerals. You can see there about 31% minerals. Pet food, actually animal feeds, particularly fish meal and things that go into animal feeds. I remember this from my previous life that we're very big importers of fish meal from Latin America. Of course, fresh food that can come in terms of either frozen products, maybe frozen beef, and other frozen chicken also from some of the areas over there. Petroleum, and then, of course, electronics, and then processed food. So going detailed, doing a deeper dive, so really mining products, commodities, and industrials. So you see there, meat of bovine, boneless wheat, offals of fowls of the species Gallus domesticus. And then we go to electronics also, digital processing units, I guess, for further value adding in the Philippines. For food imports, our number one, of course, import for food is meat of bovine. This is actually going into our corned beef, which is a very big favorite here in the Philippines as raw material for food processing. Well, it says here number 5 is glutamic acid and salts, corn, of course, and then Atlantic salmon, mandarins, I guess in the case of fresh food that you see in the slide earlier. These are things that we import from Latin America in the food sector. So with that, I'd like to end my short presentation. For inquiries, please, you can contact us at the Export Marketing Bureau, myself and our assistant directors, Ms. Agnes Legaspi and Anthony Rivera will be very, very happy to assist you. We have an online portal called Tradeline Philippines. You can access that at www.tradeline.dti.gov.ph. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Maraming salamat po. Muchas gracias. Obrigado. Thank you so much. Over to you, Vai.
Thank you very much, Director Senen. Now let's hear from my ambassador here in Mexico City, Ambassador Demetrio Tuason, for his welcome remarks on behalf of all the Philippine ambassadors here in Latin America. Ambassador Tuason, aside from being the Philippine ambassador here in Mexico for the past 2 years, has been a lifelong industrialist, He has contributed to the growing the business of Arms Corps Global Defense, and he has been instrumental to making the Philippines an exporting country in the global arms and ammunition industry. Welcome, Ambassador.
Good morning to all of you joining us from Manila. Magandang umaga. And good evening to everyone in Latin America. Buenas noches. I hope all of you are safe and in good health. I am Demetrio Tuason, Ambassador of the Philippines in Mexico, and I would like to thank Undersecretary, although he did not attend today, Abdulkani Makatoman, Director Senen Perlada, and Commercial Counselor Michael Roaring for organizing this webinar, where we will discuss the key market opportunities in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Mexico. Today, we will be guided by very distinguished speakers who will provide insights regarding each market in which they operate. They will share with us experiences and perspectives, which I'm sure will be of great value for everyone. I want to thank them for their time and generosity for sharing their knowledge of the business relations between the Philippines and Latin America. Now, allow me to welcome my dear colleagues, my friends, Ambassador Liling Lai Lacanlale in Buenos Aires, Ambassador Marichu Mauro in Brasilia, and Ambassador Maria Teresa Daza in Santiago. They, along with the PTIC and the Philippine Embassy in Mexico, are constantly working to create trade opportunities for the Philippines to become a stronger business partner in Latin America. At this difficult moment for the global economy, we should keep open and constant communication channels to explore efficiently the Latin American market, to be aware of its challenges and its dynamics, and to be able to tap the needs of the consumer and the industries in the region. Despite the crisis, there are sectors that will continue to present opportunities for international trade, such as personal care products, wellness products, furniture and home decor, electronics, home appliances, food, health supplements, medical supplies, and other manufactured goods in the aerospace and defense sectors. Speaking of opportunities, I would like to stress the impact that the new normal has had on e-commerce in the region. Online shopping has been constantly growing in the past years, but during the first half of 2020, the sales volume and the number of people using online platforms for the first time reached new heights. E-commerce has proved to be an effective and optimal way to reach and keep customers. I would encourage all Philippine exporters to work in partnership with e-commerce platforms operating in Latin America, to create a new marketing strategy to target each of the key markets in the region. While we listen today to our distinguished speakers and their strategies to keep their operations and trade flows, remember to keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. For a while, I've realized that the Philippines must look more and more to the Americas for business. We should push to have a greater and busier exchange, that we will match the greatness of our historical bonds, creating a freer trading relationship, taking down the barriers, opening up our markets. Thank you very much. Mabuhay. Muchas gracias a todos. Buenas noches otra vez. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tuason. At this point, we'll once more with feelings, we'll take a photo again to mark the launch of the Doing Business in Latin America business guides. Ambassadors and panelists, please switch on your cameras again. Okay. Luis, are the okay? Everybody's cameras is switched on. I'll just check. Okay. Ambassador Tuason? Okay. Ooh. Anyway, okay. At the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador Tuason, for welcoming everybody on behalf of all the Philippine ambassadors in the region. At this point, the next speaker, let's go on to the webinar proper. The next speaker is Mr. Eduardo Aviles. He's the Director of Bionutrients International. Mr. Aviles is a serial entrepreneur who has founded and had several of his own businesses. He is the owner and Director General of Natuvit, a chain of specialty health and wellness stores in Mexico. He is the co-founder of Bionutrients International, a Mexican marketer of health supplements. Eduardo, yes, you can start your presentation, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, I want to thank you to DTI, which is doing a great job. We have working with DTI more than 2 years ago. And also thank you to the Ambassador Tuason and to all the attendees. Maraming salamat. Well, we have a very short time, so I go directly to the presentation. Can you show please the first? Well, I intitulate the name of the talk is Mexico as a Philippine strategic partner. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. Well, I divide the talk in 3 issues. The first, I'm gonna present my country, Mexico, in numbers. It is the before image, please. Yes, thank you. First, I'm going to present my country. Then I'm going to talk about the ideas to do a strategic partner with Mexican companies. And in the last part of my conference, I'm going to speak about our experience in e-commerce, particularly participating in Amazon. So Mexico is a country in terms of population is the number 10 in the world. We have 135 million people. And in terms of the economy size, we are the number 15 in the world in terms of GDP. Since 1994, we have a North American agreement with the United States and Canada. The next, please. As a region, we are almost 500 million people, combined population among United States, Canada, and Mexico. And the North American partners represents almost 30% of the world GDP, with less than 7% of the population. And here, it is a very important point. Intra-regional trade among the 3 members is 20% of the total of foreign trade in the region. Next, please. Next, please. Mexico, the main port carrying goods from Asia, it is Manzanillo, which is fully owned for a subsidiary of ICTSI Philippines. So Philippine companies is the main operator of the Manzanillo port in Mexico. Between Philippines and Mexico, historically, there have been a lot of commercial since the Galeón Español. But I want to focus first that if we carry goods or merchandise by Manzanillo, we can reach both coasts, East and West Coast, and also the Middle East of the United States. So we are strategic location in order to reach the North American market. Next, please. Next. And that is important because the world commerce is changing. It was changing before the pandemic, and it is changing after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the experts find a phenomenon that they call retail apocalypse. This phenomenon, it is about all the closures of the retailing store because the online sales. So we have seen close JCPenney, Forever 21, Toys R Us, Radio Shack, and a lot of companies that in the past they were dominating the market, but now the market is being dominated by the online sales or e-commerce. So here I want to bring you to a rethink or reflection about if the final commerce it is changing, why the international commerce or the international trade, why we are supposing that it's going to be in the same way that in the last years. So what I mean is that we need to change the way we are doing business. It doesn't care if it's in the retailing or if it is in the international trade. Next, please. Here, we can see this decoding the economies of COVID-19, and there are potential losers, and potential winners. So as we can see, e-commerce, technology, personal and healthcare, as the secretary mentioned, food and processes, and medical and supply service are the potential winners. But let's just stop in e-commerce. Experts say that just in a few months, e-commerce has gave steps that were expected for the next 5 years, just in a few months. So the e-commerce, it is growing because of the pandemic. And if before the pandemic, there was identified the retail apocalypse, so with the pandemics, it is going faster than the experts think. It is calculated that in the next 5 years, 50% of the commercial malls, they are going to close. So with the pandemic, this is going to be faster. So we need to think that if the final commerce is changing, our market, our products, our industry is going to be also changed by the technology. Next, please. And let's talk about just Amazon. Why Amazon? Because it's the bigger player in the e-commerce in the world. And it is a strong company that is reaching the main markets. So I'm going to talk something about Amazon, and later I'm going to conclude with what can we do. Why Amazon? Just in the United States, Amazon has 195 million of visits per month. Amazon in the United States has more than 100 million people are Amazon users, which means that they can receive for free shipping and faster delivery. 65% of total homes in the United States are prime users' homes. So let's check now the reason for internet users in the United States to shop on Amazon in January of this year. The main reason is fast and free shipping. And let me puntualize fast. And this is the thing we have to think that is changing the way to do business. Because, for example, I'm working with 3 companies in the Philippines, and I have to wait since I put the purchase order, since I placed the purchase order and the production and then the shipment, I have to wait 2 months. So that's why I want to encourage to Philippine company to do strategic alliances with Mexico, with Mexican companies, in order to have faster response to the demand. Because if we stay with a response of 2 months in order to have the goods in the market, so the market expect faster delivery. So the main reason is fast and free shipping. The second reason is broad selection. They sell everything I need. The next reason is I am a Prime member. And the next reason is best pricing. So you can check the other reason, but I'm going to stop in these 4 reasons, in the main reasons. That's why people is buying online. Next, please. Next. And after my conclusion, I want to tell you that Amazon or e-commerce is beating the retailers, the traditional retailers, not just because they are fast, they have best pricing, and they have a lot of products, a lot of goods. Just Amazon in the United States has 500 million of SKUs or articles. I hope SKUs is the same term in the Philippines. Or just in Mexico, Amazon carry 150 million products or SKU. I mean, there are more products than population in Mexico and also in the United States. So the reason that they are beating the traditional retail is because they know their customer better than anybody. They have social media, they have referral sources, the machine learning. If we are talking about some products and we check our social media, it is probably that social media is going to show us the product or something related than my last talk with a friend. So they have a very powerful machine learning, SEO keyword opportunities, competitive benchmarking, website traffic statistics, audience insights. They know what moves to the customer. So they have a very complex process. They are doing retargeting. If I look for something in the internet, then this product that I look for, it appears that he follow me. If I go to Instagram, if I go to Facebook, if I go to the web, if I go to YouTube, they are following me. The product is following me because they are retargeting. So they have a lot of knowledge about the customer. It is not only the service, which is one of the best. It is not only the price, which is one of the best. It is not only the broad selection. It is a very complex process.
Okay, Eduardo, thank you very much. Can you wrap up?
Yeah, it's just one. The next. Okay.
Okay.
So what I mean with that post pandemic new game is gonna be about online sales are taking over the market. Case for online sales, logistic, road selection, branding and marketing, best pricing. What are the Mexican advantage, or why we have to do, or why we can think about Mexican companies' strategic partnership? Because USA, Canada, and Mexico share the same Amazon platform. Why look for strategic alliances with Mexican companies? Logistic advantage in terms of cost of time. We can reach east to cost cheaper than from the United States. We can do some part of the process. The labor cost in Mexico is almost the same than in the Philippines. We can carry if the product, if it's better or cheaper to bring it by bulk, by pre-finished or finished product, we can finish the product here, and we can do under license manufacturing or finishing some part of the process. So partnership with the Mexican companies can cut a lot of cost in terms of warehouse, and we can do strategic alliances with Philippines companies in order to reach the market in a more competitive way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Eduardo. Now we move on to Argentina. Our speaker, Martin Mansur, is speaking on behalf of Argentina's Cámara del Asia. He is a senior economist at Banco Santander and has previously worked in the Ministry of Economy, the National Statistics Institute, and has been involved in macroeconomic research since 2003. Martin, you may start your presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning for everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening for the ones who are in Latin America. I am going to give a broader presentation on the situation on Argentina and speak about the potentiality first of Argentina to grow, and then concentrate on the characteristics of the Argentinian consumer. I am an economist working for a bank and a trained macroeconomist, not specializing specifically in international trade, but we'll try to give an overview of what's going on here in Argentina and where the people interested to make trading with local companies should focus. First of all, the first slide, I depict the main characteristics of the country. We have to take into account that Argentina is the third largest economy in the region after Brazil and Mexico. It has approximately 45 million people, but it's an important and an interesting platform to access a market of more than 200 170 million people, because it belongs to the Mercosur trading bloc. And you know, well, Brazil, the biggest country in this trading bloc, is easily accessed through Argentina. So it is, of course, typically the country has been a middle-class economy, where middle classes have been important, and a thriving consumer in the country. But you know that this country also is characterized by several, well, economic challenges that we had to go through in the last years, in the last decades. If we compare the macroeconomic characteristics of Argentina vis-a-vis those of the neighboring countries like Chile or Brazil, the performance of Argentina is relatively well, worse than those countries. Even before the COVID-19 crisis struck the region and the world, of course, Argentina has already been undergoing a recession due to a debt crisis that was unleashed last year. Another characteristic of the country is, like in the past, in many other countries in the region, but not today, of course, inflation continues to be very high. Despite the different crises that have affected the country during the last years, Argentina is a relatively high income, or medium to high income country. Of GDP per capita is around $10,000, which is now the fourth it's ranked fourth in the region after Mexico, and of course Chile and Uruguay. Please, the next slide. Before talking about I would like to, before talking about what is the potential to access the Argentinian market, I would like to concentrate mainly of the potentiality of Argentina to grow going forward, and where are the sectors, the most dynamic sectors where the country could find a path to grow. Of course, there is a lot of potential in this country to grow in the sectors that I show here in this slide. But before, we as a society need to overcome several challenges that have been affecting the macroeconomic scenario, as I mentioned before. One of these, or some of these challenges, have to be with the regulatory environment, which in Argentina is definitely one of the factors arresting growth. Mainly labor regulation, and of course trade regulation is burdensome in the country. So this is one of the main things that authorities, together with companies and the society at large, should concentrate on simplifying and making it more easier for companies to trade. The infrastructure, well, this country was characterized in the past by its the quality and extension of its infrastructure, which was better than the neighbor countries. But in the last years, I would say that many of these neighboring countries have surpassed Argentina in terms of the quality and the quantity of infrastructure. So the government, again, here needs to improve logistics, ports, airports, and lots of other segments of infrastructure in order to make business easier. And there are two other things that are complicating a bit the environment, macroeconomic environment. One is the high interest rates, or the cost of capital. To take loans in Argentina is very expensive. This has to do with the fact, first of all, that inflation is very high. Therefore, interest rates are also high in local currency, but also with the fact that many of you may know that at this moment, the government is undergoing a negotiation with private bondholders on how to restructure the government debt. And the country, of course, is virtually in what we call selective default. So the interest rates also in dollar terms are also very high. And the last thing is that the tax pressure is relatively high compared to other countries, probably with exception of Brazil. What are the main drivers of growth going forward, provided that these challenges are overcome in the future? Well, there are lots of clusters where we see growth. One of the main ones is the agricultural sector. You know, Argentina is one of the main players in agriculture worldwide, mainly in the oilseed cluster. Also in the energy sector, Argentina has one of the best basins of non-conventional hydrocarbons or shale oil and shale gas worldwide. It is comparable to the best fields that we see in the United States. Also in energy, but not hydrocarbons or not fossil energy, but renewables energy. Argentina has very good conditions for the exploitation of wind and solar energy. And finally, the resources of lithium. This is a very important metal for the production of batteries, taking into account that the production of electric vehicles in the future will be one of the main drivers of lithium demand, while Argentina has one of the largest reserves in the world. I mean, these are the main sources of growth going forward, again, provided that this macroeconomic situation is definitely solved by this government and by future government. Please, the next one. These are probably not the only sectors where we see potential. There are some sectors that are not very well known, but also have a potential to growth going forward, like mining. We are next to Chile, Peru, and Brazil, which are mining powerhouses, but Argentina also has a lot to offer here. Some services-related clusters like technology, tourism, and telecommunications. So these are the main, again, clusters and sectors where the growth in the country could come from. Why am I speaking about how the country could grow going forward? Because in order to have a strong market and a strong consumer going forward, we need to see first that the macroeconomic situation is solved. We need, as a society, to come to certain consensus in order how to manage these problems that are affecting this country or have been affecting this country for so many years, and set the basis in order to grow sustainable going forward. Only then we will have a very interesting market to trade with thriving consumers. And the next one, please. Speaking about consumers in Argentina, and this is the last slide I'm going to talk to. Again, Argentina, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a society characterized by an ample middle class. Roughly half of the population, a bit less than half of the population, is composed of what we call the middle, the higher middle, or the lower middle class, which is an affluent consumer, has a big purchasing power, and is a profile of consumer that likes spending a lot. But on the other hand, the successive economic shocks and economic crisis and the situation that has become more challenging in the past has made the Argentinian consumer a bit more selective. I mean, it's a very demanding consumer in terms of the price to quality relation. The Argentinian consumer has not, I mean, he or she has not any problem in order to change marks in case she or he find a better consumption, a better price quality relation in a new product. It's an adaptive consumer. It constantly changes its purchasing habits, and it reacts very fast, very swiftly to different stimulus. Of course, it is a type of consumer that has been shaped, but again, by the successive crises or shocks that have affected the economic environment in the country in the past. But it's also a consumer that is very online, has a lots of online research before purchasing products. Most of the Argentinian consumers have a smartphone and make a thorough research before buying a new product through the internet, using the smartphone or using the computer or tablet. It's a consumer that is again probably a very interesting one, a very probably a challenging one to try to convince with new products. But again, if we assume that going forward the country is going to solve these general challenges or problems that are affecting the macroeconomy, we think that Argentina continues to be a very attractive market to trade with in the future. I'm going to finish with this this slide, and I'm open to questions if you have after in the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you very much, Martin, for that presentation. Now we move on to Brazil. Mr. Igor Ferreira Luna is the Executive Director of the Brazilian Coconut Institute. He is a lawyer and a specialist in public law and has a wide experience in government relations, commercial disputes, and international law. Good evening, Igor. You may start your presentation.
Good evening, Michael. Thank you for the invitation. Good evening or good morning for everyone. My idea here is to give you an overview about coconut market in Brazil, but concentrating on desiccated coconut, including volume of imports, background of protective measures, and opportunities in Brazil. I believe that the first presentation made by Mr. Director was accurate when it showed that desiccated coconut, in spite of being the major fruit exported by the Philippines, is not even among the 10 products that are most exported by the Philippines. So I believe it shows that there is a wide range for us to explore in Brazilian market. The next slide, please. Well, so for you to have an idea, in 2019, Brazil has bought 21,000 tons from Asian countries, which includes the Philippines, and exported 24,000 tons. 38% of that volume came from the Philippines, and it shows that we still have a lot to explore here, considering especially the volume that imports that Brazil has when you look at all exports from the Philippines. So Brazil only buys 3% of desiccated coconut produced by the Philippines, which is very little volume if you can compare, for instance, with the US that buys around 40% of the desiccated coconut. Well, in Brazil, we have a wide area to be explored, that is explored for the desiccated coconut. We have 280 acres planted in Brazil, and we produce yearly 2 billion fruits. We are the fourth largest producer of the coconut, while the Philippines is the second one. The producers in Brazil explore majorly the northeast area, and Brazil has a continental area, so you may imagine the logistic issues that we face to distribute the product in Brazil. So that's why imports are relevant for us, and that's why we want to expand imports from the Philippines. Next slide, please. Well, as you may know, coconut is a major product in the Philippines, but it doesn't have an open market in Brazil. So our issue here is not as similar as the problems we see in Argentina and in Colombia. What is our issue here? It's a more traditional one. We have, for desiccated coconut, a tariff or a tax import of 55%. Which is outrageous if you compare to other products we have here. And for instance, with fresh coconut and coconut water. So you can see that for coconut water, we have a 14% rate, and for fresh coconut, a 18 to 19 rate. So if you take a look at the list of products that Brazil buys from the Philippines and the Philippines buys from Brazil, you can see a similar tariff. So for tobacco, for instance, which is a dangerous product for health, we have a 20% import tax, and we couldn't see any similar tariff imposed by the Philippines to a Brazilian product. So we can see that this 55% is not something that you can find a reasonable motivation for that. So next slide, please. So why is that? Why do we have a 55% tariff over desiccated coconut? In Brazil, we face a challenge that is the level of power the local producers have over under a politics point of view. So for you to have an idea, during the coronavirus crisis, a congressman filed a law project intending to prohibit all imports of coconut, and I'm not talking about desiccated coconut only, for 1 year. So that shows the level of power they have here. Another bill, which is being discussed in Brazilian Congress, proposed a ban on all imports from countries that have different labor and environmental laws than Brazil. For instance, some congressmen claim that the Philippines and other Asian countries, such as Indonesia and Sri Lanka, they use monkeys to harvest the coconut. So that's the level of claims we have here in these discussions. Another argument that looks to be more reasonable is that countries such as the Philippines, they give subsidies to local producers, so they could have a better price than producers in Brazil. Well, that is not totally true. We are well aware that the Philippines has not filed any report on subsidies before the WTO, and we know that that's just a narrative dispute. So we don't have actual evidence to discuss with them. So that's the level of challenge we have here in Brazil. Next slide, please. So the 55% tariff is not the worst that was imposed by Brazil to the Philippines, to coconut from the Philippines. Back in '95, Brazil, by claiming that the Philippines was given subsidies to local producers, have imposed a safeguard measures, which resulted in a 290% tax import to the desiccated coconut. That protection went last until the 2000s, and since then, they use a mechanism called LETEC, which our colleagues from Mercosur are well aware, that allow countries to list 100 products that are not subject to a common tariff. So for desiccated coconut in the Mercosur, we have a common tariff of 10% for desiccated coconut. So Brazil is the only country that has changed that rule and imposed to the desiccated coconut a 55% import tax by using those claims. So, but the funny thing is, Brazil has an excellent trade balance with the Philippines. In 2019, so for you to have an idea, Brazil had a $400 million trade balance over the Philippines. And at the same time, as I mentioned, the Philippines does not impose a similar tax import for Brazilian products. So we cannot actually find a reasonable motive for that level of protection. And we believe that we have an excellent opportunity to discuss with Brazil why is that happening and how can we crack down that tariff. I'm not saying that we should, from one day to another, change the tariff from 55% to 10% as Argentina, as Colombia, and other countries in South America. But we should find a number that could, at the same time, work as a reciprocity measure towards the Philippines, and also keep a certain level of protection to local producers. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities we see here in Brazil regarding desiccated coconut? In spite of all of those obstacles, between 2015 and 2019, we had a 20% growth on imports from the Philippines. So even though those obstacles, we keep buying and we want to buy more. So as a member of the National Coconut Institute, we can say that the products here in Brazil are not as good as the products from the Philippines. And Brazilian producers don't have the same scale of production to respond to the market needs. So what we need here is to lower the tariffs for desiccated coconut. That shouldn't be so hard to be done. We are working here with the Ambassador Mary Chumaro, who has been helping us with this project, and we see that we have all the legal arguments, we have all the commercial arguments to show to Brazil that it doesn't make any sense. The Philippines is a great commercial partner. As I mentioned, Brazil has an excellent trade balance with them. And we also have opportunities to sell the product all over Brazil. Brazil buys only 3% of the Philippines products, especially desiccated coconut. And we want to be a part of the list, of the first list that the Mr. Director showed for us. So that's our main goal. We want to expand Brazil and the Philippines partnership, but we have those more traditional obstacles regarding tax import. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor. Now we move from Brazil. We go to Chile. Our speaker, Mr. Gerardo Velasco Baratawi Jaja, is the president and founder of the Chile ASEAN Chamber of Commerce. As a Chilean-Indonesian businessman and entrepreneur, he has lived and worked in 3 continents, including the nations of Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Gerardo, it's your turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pike. Magandang umaga to everybody in the Philippines y buenas tardes, buenas noches para todos acá que nos acompañan en Latinoamérica. So the presentation I'll be showing you today will be a bit of a roller coaster. It will be discussing about the different challenges we're facing today in the Chilean market, as well as the opportunities that can arise. Naturally, if I would be giving this presentation maybe 5-6 months ago, it would be considerably different. But without further ado, let's continue. Next slide, please. So for those that are unfamiliar with Chile, besides perhaps how skinny we are as a country and that we in some manner actually look like a chili, we have about 18 million people in the country, of which about 1.2, 1.3 at this point are foreigners and continue to increase. Our GDP at this point is near the 300 billion mark, and last year's growth was unfortunately only of 1.1%, whereas our original projections were over the 3%. Now, this was particularly due to some internal social, political issues we had towards the end of last year. As of today, the current concerns naturally are more towards COVID-19. Now, having said that, why is Chile a very interesting economy in Latin America? Now, one of the very important things to highlight is where we lead, right? Even though as small as we are as a nation, we're also a very, very strong economy with a very strong consumer mentality. And within that context, we have become a very open economy. And within that, we've become the regional leader in Latin America for ease of doing business, global competitiveness, global innovation, and also human development. Now, on top of that, we also have trade agreements with many, many economies around the world. We have 29 trade agreements, which give us access to 65 different economies, including, of course, Latin America, North America, Europe, and considerable parts of Asia, as well as Oceania. So within that context, we do have access to a large part of the global GDP at very preferential, if not zero tariffs. And on top of that, we also have a very strong service sector within our economy, accounting for over 61% of our GDP. Now, having said that, Chile is, of course, a platform, as many of the other Latin American countries are, to access the rest of Latin America, as well as, in the case of Chile, the Pacific Alliance. Now, I will later touch towards the end of the presentation to sort of end on a high note with what are these benefits of using Chile as a platform. Next slide, please. In terms of our relationship with ASEAN, it's also important to highlight that we are the most open economy of Latin America with the Southeast Asian nations. We do have 6 trade agreements currently. Unfortunately, Philippines is not one of them. But having said that, our standard tariffs in Chile for imports is only of 6%. Now, in 2016, we also signed the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with ASEAN, and last year we became the development partner with ASEAN, only second to Germany worldwide. Now, in terms of total trade with the Southeast Asian bloc, we account for, well, ASEAN is our 8th largest trading partner, which is very, very positive for the Chilean side, of course. And within that context, Thailand and, well, Vietnam now also competing for sort of the first position within that. Now, ASEAN is also Chile's destination that has experienced the highest growth exports over the last several years, and we do hope that that trend continues in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of our trade, bilateral trade with Philippines, it's not particularly large. The imports the products that we import in Philippines have been rather consistent over the 2017 to 2019 period. Chilean exports are a bit more of a up and down, largely due to the exports of copper. Perhaps some of you know, but Chile is the world's largest exporter of copper. So I'm sure a lot of the minerals you're also getting from Latin America, from the Chilean side, is mainly copper. Now, in terms of what sort of products you do find from the Philippines in Chile, you find a lot of electronics, printing machinery, electrical parts. You do find some chemicals, also a presence in the textile sectors, garments, and you have some coconut products. You do naturally compete with your other ASEAN peers as well within that area, and as well as Brazil, which is a very close neighbor. And we also find medical appliances, personal care products, and wristwatches, among other things. Next slide, please. So before we continue, we're going to go a bit on the unfortunate part of the roller coaster and talk about the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19 and how is that affecting the Chilean economy. Next slide, please. Overall, in terms of Latin America, Chile is not, from general figures, it looks like we're not doing particularly bad, but if you can press on the screen, please. When you tally us in terms of Latin America, in terms of the effects of cases and deaths towards the 1 million population, we're not doing very well at all. Like, these are the sort of top figures you don't want to have for your economy. We do have them currently right now. Having said that, it is important to highlight that in Chile, our medical system has managed to keep up with the rate of contagion. Our entire system has been working anything between 80 to 90%. So it hasn't been overused in any situation. We do have ventilators. We have oversupply of ventilators. So within all the issue we're suffering with COVID-19 today, our system, our economy has maintained itself, and at least it has projected to continue to do so. Next slide, please. Well, some of the measures that we are going to be experiencing more recently in terms of moving ahead, the government has recently unveiled a step-by-step plan, which includes 5 stages for moving from quarantine to a more advanced reopening of the economy. We have been in lockdown more or less since 18th of March. The good thing is, as of tomorrow, I'll actually be able to walk on the street without having a special permit. So I'm looking forward to that. Besides that, the government has been providing a lot of stimulus packages, a lot for the middle income sectors, for households, for companies, for workers, for small and medium enterprises, from just plain out subsidies to loans to credit lines and so on. And we've also seen a large reduction in interest rates and tax rates and so on for several years to come. So we're looking to, our economy is looking to be one of the largest performers in terms of bouncing back from COVID-19 within the region. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of GDP growth, now these will be some grim numbers. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, so let's go right into it. Next slide, please. So Chile overall, we're looking at a contraction of maybe 4.3% within what will be 2020. You will find projections which are less, you'll find projections which are more. Within the sort of LATAM average, we are better off, and we will also be bouncing back better off in 2021. And regards to the world in general, we won't be suffering as much in terms of sort of economic contraction. Next slide, please. Another source that we use, well, that one particularly was from the World Bank. Now, from the OECD, we also look at figures specifically regarding private consumption. As I mentioned at the beginning, Chile is a very, very strong consumer-oriented population. And within that context, of course, we're going to experience a very, very large decrease within that. So we're looking at about a 13.9 variation drop within that context for a single hit scenario, a little more for a double hit scenario. Now, if we can go for the next slide, please. We have a similar situation when it comes to the imports. Actually, a lot of the products that we consume are imported, and of course, we do experience a large hit within this regard as well. Next slide, please. Now, right, so let's take a shot about the macroeconomic situation today in Chile. Our inflation is very much under control, even though it's above what we would hope it to be. It's expected to be at 1.9% over the next 12 months. And on top of that, the central bank has reduced the central bank interest rate, the monetary policy rate, down to 0.5% from an original 1.75 pre-COVID. So these are just some of the measures that we've been implementing since March. Now, our exchange rate variation at this moment is actually very beneficial for importing. And in terms of general fluctuation, since all of this started, is only between 6% up or 6% down. So overall, our currency has maintained itself quite stable throughout this time. In terms of economic activity, that's where we really see the hit in our economy, where we were at a growing rate of 3.3% back in February, and now within the last report in May, we've experienced a drop in 15.3%, which is, as you can see, an increase from the 14.1% back in April and the 3.1% in March. So we are not, we're primarily concerned in returning to a more active economic activity. A very small portion of companies in Chile are actually operating between a 90 and 100% capacity. So we're making all the sort of measures to change that and sort of return to a more normal level of economic activity. Can't really refer to it as normal at this point. Now, unemployment, we also have taken a significant issue within that. Pre-COVID, we were looking at about a 7.8% rate. Now it's jumped up to about 11.2%, which is expected to at least increase a little bit more. Now, the stock market has been recovering and is almost back to its original, if you will, situation. Overall, it's been improving over the last 60 days. Within the last 30 days, our indicators have gone up by 0.6%, and at this point, the compound effect has been only about minus 6.5%. So not too bad considering the overall situation. Moving, next slide, please. Now, in terms of imports, as I mentioned, naturally, as a consumer-oriented economy, we'll be taking a direct hit on this regard. Now, the decrease we've had in imports is sort of the lowest value we've experienced in the last 10 years, which is quite significant. So what we're going to see is naturally a shift in different consumer tendencies to what sort of products they're more willing to buy. Now, consumer goods have actually represented a 41% drop in the imports. And some of the sectors that have been more largely affected, of course, are garment, footwear, anything related to fashion, since we're all more or less stuck at home. Automobiles, for the same reason, cell phones, electrodomestics, TVs, and computers are overall not being imported as much. Now, do highlight a bit on that because even though we're importing less of some of these products, the sales within some of these sectors have skyrocketed. Next slide, please. So just, yeah, thank you. So some of the affected sectors we have, of course, commerce is naturally the main hit here. It's gone down about 51% now in May. At this point, only essential stores are allowed to be open in Chile. So anything that's really commercial oriented, all the malls, all these small trading businesses and so on, everything is still closed. So we've had a shift naturally towards the e-commerce sector and online sort of marketplaces. So as I mentioned, consumer products, textiles, footwears, decorative items and such have been down. Automobiles sales have gone down over 60% across the supply chain. 2 more clicks, please. Now, restaurants and food service, as you'd expect, in most economies facing a lockdown, they've been on the very, very down low, with only functioning and deliveries at this point. So there's been no dine-in for any restaurants since the 22nd of March in Chile. Overall, sales are down by 83.7% in May alone, just for the restaurant and food service. Now, in tourism, as you'd expect, the same situation. In fact, only worse. So hotel accommodations and such have been down 97% in sales in May. The borders have been kept closed since March. We have very limited domestic tourism, and there's minimum revenue across the supply chain. For this first semester, it's almost down by 50%. Now, some of the sectors, next slide, please, that are actually, I wouldn't say well off, but are having mass consumption effects, right? So it's very important to understand that these do not necessarily represent a trend, but rather represent also peaks in consumption based on different moments during this sort of pandemic situation. So internet retail overall has gone up by over 100% for the first semester. This last quarter in particular, it's been almost at 150%. So you do find niche areas where different products are consumed more, such as technical consumer goods, which are up by 300%. And even the largest retail department stores you have in Chile that have had to close all their stores nationwide are having sales over 200%. So there's a really, really interesting shift, again, towards a digital space that have sort of left out the entire use of physical department stores and such. Now, COVID-related supplies would, again, of course, be up from alcohol-based products to cleaning products, face masks, multivitamins, and such. Now, electronics obviously had a peak at different points in the pandemic. When we were first locked down, these are kind of the products that went and got sold out. In the same way, everything that's home and office related to getting up your home office set up, desks, chairs, furniture, and even home furniture. Because at the end, when you have almost half the population confined for several months, you start wanting to redecorate your house. So a lot of this has been happening, but again, these are sort of peaks you're going to experience, not necessarily an ongoing trend. Because once you replace your couch, you won't be replacing it anytime soon. So exercise machines are also within that category, since all the gymnasiums have been closed since March. And in fact, they're not expected to be open up until the 5th stage of the reopening plan. So at least that's one area where people that's still a bit sold out, and there might be some opportunity. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So speaking of what are the opportunities we can find today in Chile. So even though we've had a lot of sort of affected sectors in our economy, as of now, well, rather as of June, we've only had 867 companies close in the entire country, which accounts to 0.068% of all the companies in the country, which speaks very well, again, of the healthiness of our economy and also the resilience of the different enterprises we have in Chile, from the small, the micro company enterprises up to the large corporations. Now, exports have been largely unaffected. We've only had a compound drop of 8.8%. Most of these entities, again, are operating at almost full capacity, since most of the production capacity takes place outside the capital, which is where most of the lockdown is currently in place. A lot of this has been largely unaffected, which also means, since exports are largely unaffected, means that we still continue to require supplies for intermediate goods. So in terms of imports, again, it's very important to highlight that they account for over 90% of consumption in a lot of the consumer sectors, including automotive parts, furniture, electronic products, home appliance, stationery, and so on. So again, none of these products are being produced locally. In fact, manufacturing in Chile has been in the decline for over a decade and constantly getting smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of participation within our economy. Now, high growth sectors that we're seeing today is anything related to the digital economy. So if you're able to find local partners that have online sales channels, have a way to push your product in these more, now mass consumption markets, that is e-commerce and online payments, that's an interesting area to move in. Consultancy services have been on the high. From one side, a lot of companies don't know how to get out of the current situation, others needing to digitalize their companies, their solutions, and their relationship with their customers. Now, you may also want to focus in different niche consumer goods. I'm just going to throw one right out of the bat. For example, gaming products. Now, this comes out a bit of a personal experience situation. They've been sold out for about 3 months at this point. So you will always find these different niche sectors that are constantly selling, because everybody's been locked down and are trying to find alternatives to entertainment. Let's not forget that the entertainment sector is basically non-existent at this point, except that anything that you can get from the internet. And if it's not from the internet, it's going to be on games you can buy, consoles, television, and so on. So, and now motorbikes and parts. Now that, even though automotive sales and such are on the low, you will find opportunities in the motorbikes, because again, since the restaurant deliveries, the only thing that can work at this point is, foods are only being delivered. A lot of this is currently being done through motorbikes. Now, in terms of investments, you would think, well, maybe it's not a good time to do investment. Yeah,
we're a bit running late, so if you could try to speed it up and wrap up shortly. Yeah,
absolutely. So investments, even though you'd think nobody's looking to invest, in fact, a lot of local and international investors continue to be interested, especially now when there are different companies looking for foreign capital or local capital to get through the current situation. So for the exporters, it might be a very interesting scenario to really capitalize on this situation, to jump over several hurdles of getting through, finding a local partner and so on, by partnering up with a local distributor, a local company that has established channels and customers through some form of joint venture and capital injection. Next slide, please, which I believe is the last one. Right, so this is just sort of a general overview of the kind of potential products you can end up. Next slide. The next one's better, actually. Yeah, that's right. So there's a list of different products. You'll have this list. Naturally, I'm sure you'll have the presentation shared for you at the end of this situation. So everything with an asterisk is basically the ones that are COVID affected. Everything else is still more or less either benefited or ongoing. Next slide, please. And this is the last one. Yeah. So in terms of, again, from Chile to the Americas, we have, again, through our free trade agreements, we have access to all the Americas, as well as many other countries. We do have a strong push towards generating global value chains. So if you're looking to penetrate a lot of markets using Chilean trade agreements, you can, again, build on value here in Chile, adding 40%, right, in terms of the denomination of origin, and it's already a Chilean product. On top of that, you will find a lot of capable technical and professional human capital. We do have the strongest financial institutions in the region. We also have equal treatment under the law for foreign corporations who can actually have 100% foreign ownership within the country. We uphold our international commitments. And on top of that, at the very north of Chile, we have a free trade zone that allows you to access over 6 different South American countries with over 100 million people. So that overall is what I wanted you to sort of get from this, that even though as we're still suffering through the current situation of COVID-19, there are a lot of different pockets of opportunities, and Chile continues to be the country that is expected to bounce back the best from the COVID-19 situation. So we do look forward to making more business happen in imports and exports and investments with the Philippines. So anything, the presentation will include further information, also how to contact me. You can skip towards the end. So this is just extra information for you all for when you want to review. I wasn't actually going to go through this. So there's my contact information. Feel free to contact any way you prefer, line, WhatsApp, email, so on. So thank you. Thank you very much. Michael, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Gerardo. Now from Chile, let's move on to Colombia. It's time for us to hear from a Filipino with significant experience in the IT sector in Latin America, particularly in Colombia. Ms. Rowena Weng Bagadion is a serial social entrepreneur and a recognized leader in the creative industries in the Asia Pacific. She is currently the president and CEO of several companies belonging to the W. Bagadion Group. She founded the Creative Economies Council of the Philippines and is a past president of the Animation Council of the Philippines. Magandang umaga, Weng. I understand you're in Manila. You may start now.
Magandang umaga po sa mga kababayan ko. Buenas noches a todos en LATAM. Thank you so much for your invitation, Sir Vike, and it's my pleasure to be presenting this today. I have a very interesting position right now because, as Sir Vike mentioned, I'm a Filipino. So it's strange on one side that I am presenting on behalf of LATAM, but I think it's a strength in the sense that for those Filipinos who would like to do business with LATAM, I can definitely give you from firsthand experience. So next slide, please. Our group has 20 years of successful business relationships in 4 regional hubs. So you can see there Philippines, Colombia, Turkey, and the United States. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of our, I apologize for the presentation. I believe it was converted from Mac format. So if there are things you cannot decipher from this one, I believe we can get a PDF presentation. In terms of our experience in LATAM, the total value of the projects that we've had over the last 7 years is approximately about $3 million US. The countries that we have covered, you will see there 10 countries are listed. Some of those countries are in all caps, and those are basically the ones that belong to a regional trade bloc called Alianza del Pacifico. And I've been very blessed that I've been to 80% of the countries in LATAM. There's only 5 countries I've not been to. In terms of the industries that we've covered all these years, creative industries, IT and telecommunications, manufacturing, food and beverage, travel, and tourism. One of the other things that is unique about my position is I'm presenting to you services instead of products. And despite the fact that we're also affected by COVID, I would say even without COVID, I would say that concept of fast delivery is a matter of minutes when you're talking about services. The biggest barriers in terms of doing business with LATAM for services sector isn't so much about logistics as long as you have the internet. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically this is an introduction to what we call La Economía Naranja, or in English we say the orange economy. And for those who have not heard of it before, it is not actually about naranjas or oranges. It's about the creative industries. It's a branding that was first heard of in 2013 through the Inter-American Development Bank, or IADB, which is, for the Filipinos, it's like the counterpart of the Asian Development Bank for LATAM. And it was coined by no less than Ivan Duque Marquez, which is the incumbent president of Colombia. So he was not president of Colombia at the time. Obviously, he was working for projects with IADB, but he has since been the president in 2018. The orange economy covers Latin American and the Caribbean, which is a bigger, for those who are not familiar, it's a bigger, more than 30 countries as opposed to about 20 for LATAM. And the creative industries have 3 categories. It's basically traditional arts, culture and tourism, new media, and content software. Now, if you're gonna ask me why it is called orange, as I mentioned a while ago, it's more about the branding, and that part below of the presentation will give you kind of like the passion behind the term, the orange economy. And I won't go through the details of it, but at the end of the day, it's because the color orange represents creativity. In many cultures, in many generations, all throughout the time, that color seemed to represent creativity. Next slide, please. All right, this is the orange universe, as we are calling it. And you can go through one by one when you receive the presentation. But the basic premise of this is that you will see how big the economy is for the creatives when you look at all those listed above. So you have art and heritage. So the visual arts are part of it, performing arts, tourism and cultural heritage. Okay. And then you have the conventional cultural industries where you have publishing, audiovisual, the music industry, and the new forms or the new media, which is basically video games, e-commerce, all of those things are all part of the orange universe. And across the broad spectrum of all of these sectors, the banner or the mandate is to promote creative entrepreneurship. Next, please. How big is the size of the orange economy? So globally, in terms of the market for all of this in 2018, it has doubled from 208 billion in 2002 to about $509 billion in 2015. And the average export growth rates is more than 7%. The key to understanding the whole size is basically that it's throughout the global economy, you would have different parts of that creative economy. And if you lump them all together, it will be probably, if it were a country, as we say, if the orange economy or the creative industries is one country, it will be the 4th largest country in the world. Now, in terms of Colombia, as I was tasked to focus here on Colombia, this is not to say, by the way, that the other countries like Chile, for example, Chile, I know very much you're promoting a lot of the services and a lot of the creative sector. It's just that for this presentation, I was tasked to promote Colombia. So for Colombia, the 2019 value of the creative economy is about $10.8 billion, or 3.5% of the country's GDP. And it's growing by an average of 5.5%. How significant is that? In terms of the data from the World Bank, the country's GDP grew by 38.7%. Their manufacturing sector grew by 50.1%, but the creative grew by 88.6%. And out of this, the highest is audiovisual. Next is books and publications, cultural education, advertising, and design.
Write it on a paper. Yeah.
In 2017, there's 247,849 jobs. And in the creative production sector, there's 21,500 jobs. All in all, about a little bit more than 10,000 companies. The major locators in Colombia are HBO. So you can see there, a lot of the big networks that you are seeing right now that are producing movies and things that you normally are able to buy from your phone. Those are located in Colombia because of the government's initiative to attract more of them to do their offshore development. As I mentioned a while ago, that the president of Colombia used to be the one who coined the word orange economy. So you can probably imagine what are the types of things that he has been doing since he came into office. Within 100 days of his office, he started a lot of these infrastructure developments for the creative industries. And they're set to invest about $100 million to increase the contribution of the industry to 6.8% in 2022. There is one agency of the government called Impulsa, which is basically about innovation. Impulsa Naranja is set to give about $1.58 million to entrepreneurs in the creative industry. There is a law in Colombia called the Orange Economy Law that created the National Council for Orange Economy. And they even have auction bonds that are called orange bonds in Colombia. Last year in September, Medellin held the world's first Orange Economy Summit. So in terms of the orange economy, you see the positioning that Colombia is taking. Next slide, please. It's probably too little for you to see right now in the screen, but just to give you an idea, this is coming from the UNCTAD Creative Economy Outlook. And you will see here the value of the exports and imports of Colombia when it comes to creative services. And the key in reading the table is looking for the opportunities where we can do strategic partnerships or joint ventures or outsourcing to Colombia. You will see there that the volume of their imports is still larger than their exports. Even if Colombia is trying to give more services to areas like the United States. Basically, the country is more connected to Spain, for example. Within the region, obviously, but in terms of exporting, as Colombia, they're more inclined to go towards Spain and North America. As Filipinos, that's also probably the same market that we're looking at, the North American. But what makes the idea of partnering with Latin American companies is the fact that we can provide these goods in multi-languages. One of the things that makes it very difficult, I guess, and I am just guessing this from my years of experience in LATAM, one of the biggest challenges of Filipino exporters, regardless if you're exporting a physical product or service to LATAM, is the language. While there's a lot of Latinos that can also speak English, at the end of the day, believe it or not, it still makes a lot of difference. And you can ask the other speakers in this webinar. Still makes a lot of difference if you can speak in their language. So in that sense, the market that they're also serving, the final consumers talking about services, will also be requiring those goods at least bilingual, at least in English and Spanish. So say, for example, the market of the United States, that has been one of the key takeaways of our projects. When we start looking at the market for publishing, for example, in terms of books, in terms of games, in the United States, they more often than not require that the projects be available in English and Spanish. When we did a game for 2016, 2017, we even made the game in 3 languages, Spanish, and the other one is Portuguese. So when you talk about the services industry, more than the physical products, you have that barrier. Because at the end of the day, yes, they're creative, and also in the manner that you're programming them, in the manner you're designing them, there are cultural nuances. I am not saying that there are no cultural nuances when you're talking about coconuts or electronics, that sort of thing. But it is so much more prominent when you talk about the creative industries because it is cultural. The consumption of the goods is basically patterned after a certain country or a certain nation's appetite for something that you cannot even put a price on. Next slide, please. How is the creative industries affected by the COVID? Okay. A while ago, there was a diagram which we also follow for the winners and losers in the COVID. And in that same diagram, you will see that the worst losers are the parts in tourism. You can see here, and this is coming from UNESCO, that 30%, they're projecting 13% of museums may not or may never reopen. 95% worldwide were closed in May due to the virus. In terms of arrivals, tourism in general, 60 to 80% reduction, and about 75 million jobs are affected just in the travel and tourism. Why is travel and tourism included in this one? As I told you a while ago, creative economies is more about the culture. And all in all, when you look at the creative industries, it is probably, you know, the ones that are saying people are locked down, they're spending more time at home, they're watching a lot of Netflix, a lot of Prime Video, they're playing a lot of games. And probably that kind of industries are considered winners, but the offsetting of the disadvantage with the cultural sector is also there. At the end of the day, yes, it's true that you have a lot of this consumption, but where are the opportunities right now that we see? Taking out the travel side, taking out the tourism side, or the other aspects of culture that you cannot take advantage of in these times, where are the possibilities for creative industries? Number one is in terms of e-learning. And that has been the nature of our company for the last 20 years. Everyone is saying this virus will change completely the way that we are learning as a global nation. And we're saying, yes, in e-learning, you have a lot of that. In the entertainment side, the ones that will suffer a lot are in terms of the cinemas, but you still have the streaming networks, as long as you can get them on the platforms that are popular in your country. Now, what about doing business with LATAM as a region in terms of the creative? What we had been seeing is that, as some of the other speakers have mentioned, a lot of the industries are going for digital marketing, e-commerce. And with digital marketing, especially with this generation, they cannot stand to see a lot of text. They're very visual. So instead of having something to read, they just want something to watch. And if companies are going into e-commerce, would want digital marketing, they cannot not have graphics, videos, and all of those creative ways to market their products. If I go down a little bit lower, I will say even those companies that are promoting simple products like cosmetics or juices or canned goods, if they're not yet into digital marketing, most likely even product shots they don't have. So they're going to be needing product shots. They're going to be needing to upload them in their e-stores. They're going to be needing someone to set up their Facebook, their YouTube, their Instagram accounts. And that's where the opportunity is right now in terms of COVID-19 in the creative industries. Mike, I can sense that you're going to say, that's actually my last slide.
Oh, thank you. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Weng. At this point, we proceed to Q&A. We will start. There's a question from Brazil. Because Ambassador Mauro will be leaving us shortly. The question is, Brazil is really known as a high tariff country. Are there specific steps the government or embassy is doing to lower the tariffs? And then there's a follow-up question from Othel Campos. More details, please, on the PH Brazil desiccated coconut trade, particularly on tariff issues. I think Igor's presentation has been very exhaustive, but probably, Madam Ambassador, you can start by addressing the first part of the
Thank you very much, Mike. First of all, I would like to congratulate you and the entire Philippine Department of Trade and Industry for organizing this important webinar. Yes, Brazil has one of the highest tariff structures in the world. This is a big challenge for our businessmen and exporters who want to explore the Brazilian market. Like what Igor Ferreira Luna mentioned a while ago, one of the speakers, we are now working with a major Brazilian food company and the Brazilian Coconut Institute on the lowering of tariff for desiccated coconuts. The Philippines has been exporting desiccated coconut to Brazil for about $9 million on average each year. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, Vike, more or less, no? $9 million each year. Well, I believe there is a big potential to increase these exports if the tariff imposed by Brazil, which is 55%, could be lowered. I would like to assure our friends from the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture, I think some of them are now watching this webinar, that the Philippines did not and does not grant subsidies to coconut manufacturing and to our coconut farmers. We have no export subsidy entitlement in the schedule of commitments of the World Trade Organization or the WTO in Geneva. We also do not apply subsidies to our agricultural exports. If Brazil could lower its tariff of 55%, the increase of Philippine desiccated coconut imports into Brazil can help stabilize further the Brazilian market for food products, because consumers will have easy access to this product. Brazilian consumers will have more choices. It is as simple as that. Well, as we all know, Vike, no, the COVID pandemic is still very much around us. And therefore, it is important to ensure the stability of food supplies, especially those that are not produced locally here. So I believe the market for food products in Brazil will certainly benefit if the 55% tariff on desiccated coconut could be lowered. Salamat po. Thank you. Obrigada.
Thank you, Ambassador. Igor, would you have anything to add to that?
I think that Ms. Ambassador has said everything. Our issue here is black and white. So we have a really high tariff. We do not see a reason for that, especially considering trade balance and tariff is imposed by Indonesia by Philippines to Brazilian products, and it would be beneficial for both countries. We have a wide background of protection to this sector, and we believe that it's about time to the tariff to be cracked down on.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question, this is a consolidation of various questions. What types of assistance can the embassy extend to Philippine businessmen or exporters seeking to enter the respective markets in your jurisdiction? Well, I'll start with the answer. First of all, they already have a very heavy workload. The embassies do a great job in the promotion of Philippine trade through their economic diplomacy efforts. One example is our embassy in Santiago de Chile, which has done quite well in this regard. Now, I have to apologize. We've been addressing her by her mother's name, which is Maria Teresa. She's actually Maria Teresita. So, Ambassador, perhaps you can, Ambassador Daza, Ambassador Maria Teresita Daza, you can perhaps elaborate on that question of the types of assistance and projects that the embassy does to promote economic diplomacy.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I'd like to congratulate you and the team and DTI for this very laudable initiative. As the pandemic continues to beset us, I think we cannot wait until the pandemic eases, and there's need for us to actually buckle down to work and do as much as we can to help the country and our people. You talked about economic diplomacy. Economic diplomacy is very important. It's one of the main thrusts of government, of foreign policy. It means that we harness all the tools necessary so that we can influence positively the impact on trade and tourism, on investment and development cooperation, and alike, so that it could serve our national interests. The embassy is at the forefront. It is a composite team. We have from DFA, DTI, and sometimes embassies also have agricultural attachés that actually promote economic diplomacy. For the embassy, in concrete terms, what do we do? One, I think, is in terms of the issue of providing information on both the opportunities and challenges that is in the market. Most of the speakers spoke of both the opportunities and challenges. For Chile, where I am actually serving as ambassador, clearly the opportunities come in terms of its being an open economy, being market-oriented, with a high level of trade, with the capacity to actually engage in trade as well as in terms of the good institutional mechanisms that exist in the country. In terms of challenges, it has been mentioned, it is different per country, but for Chile, with us in terms of trade, it's because we do not have at this point an FTA. The Philippines has not yet entered into a free trade agreement with Chile, but at the moment, it's also actually negotiating for a memorandum of joint economic cooperation, which will hopefully be the stepping stone in terms of a free trade agreement. This actually affects in terms of serves as a challenge. And there are other challenges that are actually can be provided in terms of information, the opportunities as challenges, so that when our businessmen come to enter the market, they're grounded in terms of what is possible and what needs to be addressed. The other aspect, I think, is in terms of market insights that come largely because you're immersed in the country. You have networks with both policymakers and the private sector. You have links with Chamber of Commerce, such as the Chile ASEAN Chamber of Commerce and other chambers. So these are actually something that could help the private sector in terms of entering the country. There is also the aspect of promotion, which we are in a position to actually work on. Vike, you actually mentioned the very successful participation in the ASEAN Week in the very heartland of Chile, where we were very grateful that you were participating, and you participated in the business forum, as well as exhibited export products that you sourced from EMB. And this gave the businessmen and also an insight into what we can offer, and actually led to some direct buyers leads that could help us in terms of increasing trade. So promotion can also be in terms of our participation in the regular Independence Day celebration that allows us to actually showcase not only Philippine culture, but also Philippine product, Philippine food, and our participation in different bazaars. There's the other aspect in terms of representation, which the embassy also participates in terms of our negotiations when it comes to, like for example, recently in Chile, we had the negotiation for air services, and this is something that the embassy also participates. So the other aspect I also want to share is that the embassy is also very much involved with economic intelligence, so that we can be able to identify who are actually those that can complement us, or who can be our competitors. And it's important for us to be grounded so that we also know what can actually help businessmen or the private sector. So I hope I was able to answer the question. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So this one is from Beverly Howe of Marigold Manufacturing Corporation. Her question is, what are the Philippine products or brands that have successfully entered your market, and what are the challenges? Well, we heard from our speakers that Philippine coconut products are available in Mexico and Brazil. But may I call on our ambassador to Buenos Aires in Argentina, Ambassador Linglingay Lacanlale, to tell us more about the Philippine brands that are currently in Argentina, and what other potentials there are in the market. Good evening, Ambassador.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, well, I'd like to join our previous ambassadors for congratulating DTI and, of course, Vike for a very interesting webinar, and, of course, the very interesting and stimulating presentations of our resource speakers. Regarding your question, well, we have to do more in terms of penetrating the Argentine market. Right now, we have coconut-based products in the market, not chips, oil, vinegar, health products, and we have banana chips also. These are mainly distributed in the supermarket chains, and but they are sold under the brand and under their own brand. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to and a lot of interest in coconut oil and the coconut oil-based products for wellness and health products. Then we have the San Miguel beer, which just came into the market, I think, a few months ago, after a very long period. And I think if we have time, I can ask the president of IFISA, who was responsible for bringing in the product, what he went through, or what were the challenges that he met bringing in the beer into the Argentine market. Of course, there is now a growing interest about Asia and Asian cuisine, and also increasing, and we hope that the beer, which the Philippines is known actually in many parts of the world, will find its place among the Argentine population, which are, of course, like their wine, but they also like artisanal alcoholic drinks. If I'm correct, my observation is correct. Okay. The other thing is that we have some furnishings, home furnishings and furniture, but the problem is the pricing. We cannot compete with Indonesia and Vietnam because our prices are higher. But we have noticed that our niche is in the higher end type of furniture, like the Kobompwe type. You know, you find them in some of the hotels, and some of the more the richer family, what Mr. Mansour described as the high end consumers, this is something that we could probably look into more and aggressively promote, because we have very good designs. And the way we make our furniture is really top-notch. So I think this is something that we have to study more. But again, it is the timing of when these products will be, when the Argentine market will be receptive to receive. Of course, we are a major exporter of carrageenan. I mean, Argentina imports a lot of their carrageenan, which is a food additive. And in fact, I think in the audience now, we have the president of Farmesa, who has established a manufacturing plant in the Philippines to use as a hub for his product in Southeast Asia, in the Asian region. So that's a very good news for the Philippines. What are the products that we think we have some potential? Okay, we're trying to push canned tuna, but the Argentinians are more carnivorous than pescadores. So that is going to be a challenge for us, but it is worth exploring. Okay, I do not know why. Of course, there's a lot of meat in Argentina, but I think maybe because the Argentinians now are more aware of having a healthy diet, this may be an opportunity for us to explore. We also can probably expand our exports of electronics, car parts. Right now, the countries that import, the major countries that export is Brazil and Thailand. In fact, Thailand has among the ASEAN countries has a favorable balance of trade because of their exports of car parts. But I think we have a future here. We can, if we become more aggressive, we might be able to capture part of that market. Now, footwear. Argentina, the women love to dress up in Argentina. Like the Philippines, you know, they're very fashion conscious, they're very trendy. So fashion accessories, footwear are also areas or also products that we should try to explore. And of course, but again, the timing is very important for when we should be introducing these products to the Argentine market. Right now, Mr. Mansour already described the situation in Argentina. They are in a very difficult economic situation even before the COVID pandemic. But I think that, and of course they have a problem also with their debt restructuring. And so the focus of the government right now is solving the COVID and the economic, the dire economic situation which the country finds itself in. Now, the other challenge would be, I think, the distance between the Philippines and Argentina. Maybe shipping would be very costly. But as we see, Indonesia is very aggressive in its trade promotion. Vietnam is also very aggressive. So I don't see why the Philippines cannot do the same. You know, I realize that very little is known about the Philippines in Argentina. And I think that's a very important focus. We should do something about it, because if they don't know the country, you know, they will go to other countries that they know more. And they know more about the other ASEAN countries and the Philippines. And therefore, the embassy is really doing its best in its country presentation to present the Philippines not only on products that we can provide or we can buy from them, but also the similarity in our, our cultural affinity. Both countries were under the Spaniards for many years. And this is a good starting point for us to establish a comfortable relationship with Argentina. Of course, the other ASEAN countries also have very aggressive marketing programs. They invite Argentine businessmen to fairs. They pay for their, lodgings. They give them a free package to go to their countries. And in Indonesia recently established a forum specifically for Latin America and the Caribbean trade. So I think these are, and may I add also that four of the 5 ASEAN countries here have dedicated trade representatives. And so I would like to ask DTI if they could look into that, to have a dedicated trade representative in each of the Latin American countries, at least the major ones that are here: Mexico, Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. So I think that will improve, the numbers in terms of trade between the Philippines and Argentina. And of course, we're also looking into the IPO. The Philippines is now ready to buy, right? Buy IPO companies.
Yes.
So this is something that should be considered also by the Argentine side. So I think those are the main points that I'd like to highlight, and I hope that the information would be helpful also to our Argentine business partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let me address that issue that you raised about opening more trade posts. DTI very much wants to, but because of resource constraints, pre-COVID, we actually wanted to do another post, preferably in Chile. But we'll see in the coming weeks, the coming months, as we move along to a new normal. I think we have one question here, and I think we can direct it to Martin. The question is if a Filipino can set up a startup in Argentina. Basically, I guess they want to know more about the startup scene there, and if it's possible to set up one.
Well, yes, according to what I know about the regulation, there should be no, hurdles or specific constraints to Filipino people or any other people to set up a startup. The point here is that the regulation of the red tape, although in the last years had diminished, now it appears that it started to increase again. So the cost of setting up a startup could be probably higher, or the time, the length of time to start running the startup could be probably higher than we used to have some time ago. But according to what we know specifically about the regulation, there should be no specific hurdles to do that. And specifically in the digital businesses and digital marketing, Argentina has a very strong potential because of the development of digital startups, which are now big companies, and they were originated here in Argentina. If you like to have more details about this regulation, I suggest you could contact people who are more informed about this topic.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. Gerardo, do you have any comments? Because Chile has a very vibrant startup sector.
Yes. So for anyone interested in rather exploring the Chilean and wider Latin American market from Chile as a startup. There's a government program called Startup Chile, which is one of the top sort of global accelerators today, and more or less it's a publicly run accelerator. So they provide the complete funding for about 3 to 6 months. Depends really on the program that you're applying for. With non-equity, and it's not a credit or any kind. It's just cash on hand, if you will, to kickstart your business out of Chile and to try and tackle not just the Chilean market, but also wider Latin American and global markets. So that's one way to access the Chilean market from sort of this government funding facility. On top of that, we have a very open startup ecosystem in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship. And in terms of ranking, again, we're very high in sort of a regional leader in global competitiveness and global innovation and so forth. But we also have a lot of facilities to establish companies in Chile. You can establish a company in one day, whether you're a local company or a foreign company. It takes you one day and you have a company. So it's really, really quite easy to sort of kickstart your business in Chile. So it's from that point of view, an ideal location to sort of set up shop, and then you can again explore the different Latin American markets from here. So that's what I'd like to add.
Okay, great, Gerardo. Okay, a number of our participants have raised their hands, so let me recognize them. There's Sherry Go, Andrea Veneracion, and Lolit Cabanlet. If you have any questions, please type it in your chat box. We're just prioritizing first the questions that we received initially. Our next question will be for, we've also received a number of all of you export companies saying, okay, how can I export? Is there a specific need for my product? And then some are actually SMEs asking for what kind of interventions and services we can provide. We're, Director Perlada is still here with us, I understand. Director Perlada, probably you can discuss some of the ways by which EMB assists the exporters, because you know exporting to another country is not instant. There's a certain capacity building involved. Some of the challenges that we face as trade officers is capacity, the ability of the Philippine company to meet global standards. No, so Director Senen, please. Yeah.
So
please unmute your mic.
Yes, okay. So there are a lot of things that the Export Marketing Bureau does in terms of capacity building. And, you know, throughout this pandemic or even before that, we do a lot of capacity building for different kinds of sectors and different markets. We are, of course, working very closely, especially with our MSMEs, especially aspiring to go into exports. You're correct, Mike, no? There's a lot of preparation that you need to do when you have to go cross-border, and therefore we have to be able to prepare our exporters for that. And especially during this time of the pandemic, we can see, I think, that there will be even tighter regulations insofar as countries' imports are concerned. For example, just to give a concrete example, China, for instance, which is our basically a biggest trading partner and a biggest next to the biggest export market as well. You know, they have regulations now about certifying shrimp, you know, frozen shrimp, from being COVID-free, for instance, right? So I think a lot of these regulations will probably emerge, and therefore we have to prepare our exporters with the information and the knowledge on how they will be able to navigate through more challenging times in terms of trade facilitation. And therefore, it is really a welcome idea that we engage with markets that we should explore even more, like Latin America. So it's good for us to really diversify and see where we can establish better bilateral and regional relations. So for that, I would suggest for those that need help in that, just reach out to us at EMB. The email address that I can think of right away is exports@dti.gov.ph. Or you can contact us through our usual addresses. My email address is simply my name, senenperlada@dti.gov.ph. For those people in Latin America, of course, your first contact point would be Mr. Mike Roaring. In the Philippines, it would be the Export Marketing Bureau. So yes, we are prepared for that. We team up with our training unit or agency in the Department of Trade and Industry called the Philippine Trade Training Center, CHIMEA, and that stands for Global MSME Academy. Okay, so yes, we are prepared to take on any, and this is actually exactly what we're doing now. In Espanol, I guess you say we are on ensayo mode. We are in ensayo. You know, we have to train, we have to practice until the time when we are ready to face the world market again in a bigger way, hopefully face to face. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Okay. A lot of we have received so many of your questions, but we have really limited time. But rest assured that we shall be answering everybody. We will be sending you a survey after later, and we will be emailing everybody and responding to everybody who has questions or who has comments about market access. A final question, because Ambassador Tuason opened with a theme on the rise of e-commerce in the region, and we'll start with Eduardo, and he talked about Amazon. Are there other online platforms? Basically, the question is, what is the best online platform, and what are the other online platforms in your respective countries that we should study or we should be aware about? Okay, Eduardo, are you still there? Hello, yes. Yes, Eduardo, please unmute your mic.
Yes.
Okay. Hello?
Well, in Mexico, thank you. In Mexico, the number one is Amazon. There's another one like Mercados, but even Walmart is intending to do some marketplace. But the difference is that Amazon has dominated the marketplace because they have a very quick response. We have a meeting in a few months ago with the people of Walmart, and the response of Walmart in online sales is very slow compared with Amazon. As we saw it in the presentation, people who buy in marketplace expect a very short delivery time. So for me in North America, the leader far and away is Amazon.
Okay. How about Chile? How about Gerardo? Okay.
So I think for most of South America, Spanish-speaking South America, you're going to see Mercado Libre as the largest e-commerce platform. It's the largest in Argentina, largest in Chile, and in many other. I'm pretty sure also likely in Colombia and so on. So that will be the go-to platform. Now, as it's not as fully integrated as Amazon, if you will. If anything, it's more akin to eBay. But now it's sort of halfway between an eBay and an Amazon, providing also the transportation services.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else from our other panelists who would like to raise anything? Oh, Ambassador Mauro. Yes, please. Right? You may unmute your mic, please. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I'm back. For Brazil, Mercado Libre is very popular because it's fast, free shipping, and reliable. So yeah, that's the most famous popular e-commerce platform in Brazil.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. I think Ambassador Tuason is trying to raise his hand. You may unmute yourself, sir.
Yes. That's why I close my statement by saying that we have to have freer trading relationship, taking down the barriers, opening up our markets. How can the Department of Trade and Industry help us in doing this with the Latin American countries? I find that especially Brazil, who who showed it or who talked about it today, having such a high tariff on just desiccated coconuts. When it comes to other things like we have the experience in the defense industry that Brazil really protects their industry. However, they have already opened up their markets to Israel. Maybe the Philippines can also, Philippines or ASEAN can maybe open up some of these markets in Brazil. So what can we do to approach these problems or these restrictions in Brazil? Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world.
I think we've discussed that. So the measure really is to make representations with Brazil and to lower those tariffs. With that, I think we've had a very productive discussion this morning, this evening, and I want to assure everybody who has questions or who reached out in the Q&A that we'll be getting back to you on those that you've raised. We'll be reaching out, we'll be meeting you. And the Export Marketing Bureau, in order to participate in our upcoming online business matching, please get in touch with the EMB. Director Senen has already given their details. You may also get in touch with us directly. Yeah, okay. Now in your screens, you can see the contact details, okay? exports@dti.gov.ph for EMB, and then in my case, Michael Angelo Rowling at dti.gov.ph. Also, you can reach us at mexico@dti.gov.ph. With that, thank you very much for staying with us. We averaged 180 participants for the entire webinar, plus around 60, 70 in Facebook. May I call on for a quick summary of everything, no? Ms. Magnolia Ashley, Executive Director of DTI's Foreign Trade Service Corps. Yeah, Maggie.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Mike. It has been a very interesting discussion, and we've learned a lot. I myself learned a lot from the discussion this evening for our friends in the other part of the world. Just to briefly summarize today's webinar, we have featured speakers who are here. You know, they are very much willing to share their experiences and their knowledge about these markets, the Latin American countries. Our lineup included Latin American importers and business organizations that currently do business with the Philippines, and these include our friends from the Bionutrients International, Brazilian Coconut Institute, Cámara del Asia, and W. Bagadion Consulting. And they have, you know, mentioned the opportunities in various product categories that the Philippines is already strong. For example, coconut products, tuna, electronics, and they also mentioned to us the other possible platforms that we can use, such as online platforms like Amazon and other online marketplaces, as well as new sectors, as mentioned earlier, which is so-called the orange economy. So while the bilateral trade relations right now is quite modest, but we see a lot of potential. There are some hurdles that we need to explore how to bring them down, but definitely there is a strong potential for many of our Philippine exporters. We also have a friend, of course, with our fellow Filipina, Rowena Bagadion, who speaks our language and knows our heritage. So I think that is another advantage for us. As mentioned earlier by Vike, there will be a B2B matchmaking. We will be providing more information on that very soon, and hopefully it will be able to do that in August. So for our Philippine participants, please watch out for that information. Thank you very much, Vike. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maggie. Before we end, I want to thank with all my heart our speakers. It's almost midnight already at least in Brazil, and in our part of the world, it's already almost 9 p.m. So let me thank our speakers, the Export Marketing Bureau, the Foreign Trade Service Corps Home Office, Luis, who's been very good at the technical side of everything, Edie Maggie. And of course, we wouldn't be able to do this webinar without the strong support of our team members, the Philippine embassies and ambassadors in the region, who have provided us contacts for the speakers, and who have helped us disseminate the webinar so that more people can join. With that, please keep in touch with us, especially the Philippine exporters. We also want to hear more from our friends in LATAM. We want to be the bridge in trade between our two countries. When I did some PR articles when we were doing this, I said this is a reintroduction between Philippines to LATAM, because we have this shared Latin heritage, but unfortunately, you know, we need to reintroduce ourselves. So with that, we bid goodbye. As we say, maraming salamat. Hanggang sa muli. Muchísimas gracias. Hasta la próxima. Muito obrigado. Ate la próxima. Thank you. Good morning. Good evening.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.